Professor Devinderpal Singh Bhullar is a political dissident and activist who is facing execution in India. He has been illegally detained there for over 16 years. One Indian judge, Justice Shah, found him not guilty. Despite seeking asylum in Germany and despite Justice Shah finding him not guilty, Professor Bhullar still unjustly faces execution. Professor Bhullar has suffered from years of torturous, solitary confinement, spending 22 hours in a 9x7 cell. India's democracy is carrying out a severe miscarriage of justice. Professor Bhullar was once a young student activist in Punjab who took part in many protests against the genocide of the Sikhs from 1984 onwards. He was a protester at one such infamous rally in Anandpur Sahib, where students were rounded up and tortured. Professor Bhullar's father, uncle and friend were killed by the Punjab police in 1991 because of his activism. Professor Bhullar escaped India's persecution and asked for asylum in Germany. He was told by the German authorities that he had nothing to fear as a political activist in India. He said he would be tortured and killed in India. Yet, despite Europe being against the death penalty, he was sent back by the Germans to India, and the Indian authorities were informed. Later, the Court of Appeal in Frankfurt, Germany recognized that Professor Bhullar should have been given asylum and protection. For 16 years, he's faced torture and imprisonment. A false case was put on him, and he was forced under torture to sign a confession. The last 8 years, despite his spiritual bravery and commitment to do Bard, the last 8 years of solitary confinement have taken their toll on him. He is suffering depression from years in darkness, isolated from people, and is now fighting for his life in a mental hospital. Professor Bhullar and hundreds of Sikh prisoners are being illegally detained, harassed, tortured in India on no other grounds than their political and religious and conscientious beliefs. In May 2002, Balbir Singh met Professor Bhullar while they were both facing false charges and illegal detention, and they discussed how they wanted to help other Sikh prisoners, possibly through a charity.
I can clearly remember on the 25th of May, year 2000, when I was illegally confined in Tihar jail, ward number 6, cell number 6. I was doing my part, my prayer, Sikhi prayer, when I saw a shadow follow me, and as I looked up, I saw a Sikh figure standing, holding the jail bars, looking straight at my eyes. I got up and greeted him with Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, which he replied back. He asked me if I knew him. I said no. Sir, I don't know you. Thinking that he could be another Sikh prisoner, and I asked him who he was. He told me he is a Devinderpal Singh Bhullar. On hearing this, I was so shocked that such a gentleman who I have heard about, read about, is standing in front of me, talking to me. I just couldn't believe my eyes. I was lost with words. I didn't know what to say to myself. He told me to remain in high spirit and went away. I was filled with such hope and I was very inspired by his voice and few words. I was full of thoughts and emotions, but one thing I clearly remember thinking that even though Professor Devinderpal Singh Bhullar was going through a such and was physically imprisoned, but he was mentally free. I will always remember this first meeting for the rest of my life. It was very emotional. Even thinking today, I got very emotional. Bhullar Sahib was very a gentle person, and I will also say this that he was a very inspirable person. He would think long and hard before even say something. He talked about the pain of Punjab, especially the Sikhs, what they're going through, what's going to happen to them. He was worried. He was such a honest, religious, and who would think long ahead. And I personally think if Sikh nation had such a leader, the situation in Punjab and in the whole of India of the Sikhs would have been very different. And I remember on the last meeting, he asked me to come along alone, and he talked about the prisoners, their welfare, their legal case. And he said, Praveer Singh, you have come here and there's a reason for it. Maybe Guru Sahib Ji wanted you to see our conditions and do something about it. And he said this with such a voice that if he knew that I was going to be free, he said, you're going to be free now, your case is going to be finished, and you're probably going back to your own country. But we want you to raise a voice. You've seen the conditions. You yourself has taken on these conditions. So you know everyone here and what's it like, the suffering, the legal detention, the courts, the lawyers, the police, the everyone. So we have no voice at all. Our voice has been cut from the world. Be the voice of voiceless and help these prisoners, whoever they are, wherever they are, so at least they can fight their right, they can fight their legal battle in the court and prove themselves to be innocent. We should have at least a chance to prove ourselves. Otherwise, we don't have lawyers, we don't have no money, we don't have people coming to us when we need something, we don't know who to turn to. Even little things. So, you go out there and tell the world what is happening to the prisoners. He said this with a great power that compelled me when I came back to England to register the charity with the Charity Commission, SOPW, Sikh Organization for Prisoners Welfare, which now is covering most of the jails in Punjab and Delhi. And we are fighting all these cases which we couldn't have even thought about it. And I think it goes to, and I'm to Bhullar Sahib ji, and I'm not in wrong in saying that the founder of this organization is Devinderpal Singh Bhullar. There were so many times we met, we discussed, we shared our views, and then came the last day when I was going to be released on the 27th of March 2002. I asked the jail authority to let me meet Bhai Sahib ji because I didn't know if I was ever going to meet him. But I was refused.
Time is running out now. You must raise a voice for justice, a voice for someone who has stood up against injustice. You must push the European Union and the Indian government and urge them not to carry out this grave miscarriage of justice. A political activist who is in danger of his life, who should have been given help, has been victimized further. For over 10 years, thousands of Sikhs across the world have petitioned on the injustice of the Professor Bhullar case. But now it's time for the real protest to start. For an innocent man to be freed from death row, you must protest with us, put pressure on the German government, your own countries, British MPs, MEPs, and your voice for Bhullar's freedom is essential. You are the ones who can carry the protest each week and bring the campaign to the streets for his release. We must urge you to gather and act now. Remember, in the words of Martin Luther King, in the end, we will not remember the words of our enemy, but the silence of our friends. Log on to prisonerwelfare.com